Welcome back, guys, and to those of us that are just joining, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of knife crime, and I'm joined by two experts, Jim Pearson and Clayton Ford, on the topic. And please, guys, do not forget that you have a QR code on your screen if you'd just like to scan that and ask some questions on the panel, and the question that does evoke the most conversation will win a prize, so look out for that, guys. So I'm just going to pass over to you guys.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having us. My name's Jim Pearson. I'm from the Essex Violence and Vulnerability Unit, and I'm the operational lead focusing on knife crime and violence within the Violence and Vulnerability Unit. I'll just pass you over to my colleague Clayton to introduce himself.
Hello there, my name's Clayton Ford. I'm a detective inspector with Essex Police, and I've been a detective for about 18 years. I currently work on the serious violence unit within Essex Police, so we target gangs, county lines, knife crime and serious violence.
Thank you, guys. So knife crime is a very big topic. I think a lot of young people have very strong opinions. I myself, it's a topic I'm very passionate about, so I'm just going to go into the questions now, if that's okay. So the first question we've got from Hassenbrook Academy, and it's why are some bladed articles illegal in the home?
Some articles are illegal in the home because they're designed for injury. So there are specific items that are designed purely for weapons and not used for any sort of practical purposes. So those knives, like zombie knives and other sort of fighting weapons, nunchucks and other weapons that have no useful purpose except for violence, they're the type of knives that are illegal in homes. Normal kitchen knives aren't illegal, and knives that you would use as part of your work and everyday knives, they're not illegal, and they can be held in the home without any fear of breaking any laws.
Okay, thank you. And I'm aware that you guys have some content just before this Q&A, so if you guys would like to start that.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you, Joe. So basically talking about what we do as a Violence and Vulnerability Unit, myself and Clayton work very closely together, and that's an example of the multi-agency working we have within Essex. So working together with Essex Police, working together with all the different organisations, basically to try and keep as many people and keep you safe across the whole of Essex. What we aim to do is reduce knife harm, reduce the number of people and the harms that can happen through knife crime, and also reduce the amount of young people who may be involved in gangs, county lines and exploitation. And that's a huge task, but it's one we're dedicated to and one we're trying to make sure that we can bring out to as many people as possible, hence one of the reasons we do today. I think one of the key things for us within Essex is that we listen to your voices. We'd make sure that we listen to what young people are telling us, and we're led and directed by you. Recently we carried out our listening project, and for us that went out to over 2,000 young people across the whole of Essex, and we got over 1,500 responses. Just to give some perspective, that's more responses that were received across the whole national survey this year around UK. So for us, we take all of that information in, and then we look at how that can guide and direct the work that we carry out across Essex. So we try and implement programmes that look to reduce knife crime by giving young people positive activities, so supporting the local youth clubs, the local organisations in your areas, which can help you to be able to achieve positive success in the future through our community grants. We also develop and deliver media campaigns, look into how we can educate as many people around the worries, the concerns about knife crime, because we know that there's a lot of fear around knives, and we know there's a lot of fear about gangs, so make sure that we can help educate as many people across the county of Essex how to protect themselves, how to stay safe, but also not to feel fear, to feel confident, because we are really, really positive about the fact that Essex remains a safe county and is a safe county, and we want to continue to promote that. And then on top of that, the work that me and Clayton focus on heavily is around working with those who are most at risk and those most at risk of causing serious harm. And we do a lot of work to try and support, but also ensure that those people are kept within the law, to make sure that that behaviour is enforced, to make sure that we're able to stop harms happening. So we do a whole range of work within the Violence and Vulnerability Unit in Essex Police to tackle those who are at most risk of causing harm, but also to keep everybody safe and everyone across the whole of Essex safe. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Clayton.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, of course. And I just reiterate that Essex is a really safe county. The chance of being involved in a knife incident is really, really small. We do many things to try and prevent knife crime as well as tackle the offenders and those that are trying to bring harm to our communities. I understand it's obviously a really emotive subject, and it does strike fear into people, even to talk about knife crime and seeing the consequences of it. I work on the Serious Violence Unit, and our job is to work with partners like Jim and the Violence and Vulnerability Unit, the Benkin Seller Trust and other organisations, and we proactively target people that are committing serious violence or who we think will go on to commit serious violence, gangs and county lines. But we do a great deal of work around prevention and intervention as well, trying to help people away from that criminal lifestyle and away from being involved in knives and gangs and being exploited in particular through that type of model of behaviour. In Essex we have 16 knife amnesty bins, and that's a practical thing that we all can do, getting rid of the knives that we no longer need in our homes, getting as many knives out of circulation as possible. Those bins take in around 30,000 different weapons and objects every year. They're located at each police station and in other areas around Essex, and the details of that can be found on the Essex Police website. We conduct proactive patrols in certain areas where we know historically there might be or has been serious violence before, or people carrying weapons, and we will do that on a regular basis, and we monitor our patrolling of those areas to make sure that we are there when we think that serious violence may occur. We deploy knife arches to make sure that when we have information that people might be carrying knives, that we can detect them and prevent them from moving into an area or out of an area carrying a weapon to try to keep people safe. We conduct intelligence-led searches, so when we hear about people carrying knives or we think there might be serious violence, then we will go out and we have powers that will enable us to search people to look for those weapons. We have an operation that we call Operation Gloss, where we target the border, where we look for imports of weapons that are coming through from outside the county and from abroad as well, and we will target the people that have both sent them, working with colleagues internationally, and the location they were going to be sent to if those weapons are illegal. And as I said, we do target county lines and gangs, and we seize a lot of weapons that way, not only through the enforcement phase but those that are being exploited. We make sure that we get as many knives and weapons off the streets by targeting people that use them as part of their criminality. We use things like gang injunctions, where we prevent people from going to certain areas and carrying certain weapons. We use test purchasing and testing of retailers to make sure they're not selling knives to underage children. And we obviously do things like this with the education programme for all schools, linking up with the Benkin Seller Trust, with the Violence and Vulnerability Unit and other partners as well. So Essex is a really safe place. You're very unlikely to be involved in a knife incident, but we are working hard with partners to make sure that we target as many people as possible and get as many knives off the streets as we can.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go back to the questions. We've got quite a few streaming in. So the first question I've got is, why do some young people carry knives?
Me to go first? Yeah, so I think one of the things that the researchers said, we try and research and understand young people as much as possible and understand their perspectives. And when I've been working in youth offending services. I've worked across the whole country and worked with young people who carry knives, and I think the biggest response I get from young people is it's because they feel that it's a form of protection. In all that time that I've worked with young people, it's very, very rare for a young person to say they're carrying a knife to go out there with the intention of causing harm. The idea, most young people, when you speak to them about that, is they view it as a form of protection, which for us, both myself and Clayton, when we've worked with young people, it's a very misguided opinion, and it's because when you're carrying that knife, it isn't a form of protection. You're very much more likely to be injured by your own knife than you are when you're carrying it if you were not. So for us, when my response is, whenever I spoke to young people, they often very much talk about they feel that it's a need for protection. Our big concern is that once one person starts carrying a knife, which they feel for protection, that starts a spreading effect. So then 2 other young people will carry knives to protect themselves from that one person carrying knives. So for us, a real plea from us is that actually you're not protecting yourself by carrying knives, you're putting yourself at more harm and you're creating more harm for the community. So don't carry knives, in that opinion, for protection. It's something that we feel really strongly about, that actually is really dangerous in our communities. And so when we hear about that and talk about it, that's why we're really strong on that point, that it's really not for your own protection. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Clayton.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I mean, you've covered I think the real main point around the mistaken belief around safety. I think as you carry a knife, you increase that fear of knife crime as people understand that you're carrying a knife, and that, as Jim has already said, sort of breeds further fear. There is some peer pressure, and I understand that as well, usually from those who are exploiting or want to exploit people. So that's why some young people carry knives, and there is a lack of knowledge of the law about what you can and can't carry. And obviously, one of the questions already today is to try to help clarify some of that. You know, there is no reason to carry a knife in public unless you need it for your work. And I'm sure we'll explore that a little bit more. But there's lots of reasons, but the bottom line is, you know, you're far more likely to be injured or hurt somebody else if you are carrying a knife than if you aren't carrying a knife.
Thank you, guys. So the next question, which is from Tendring Technology College, is what is the rate of knife crime in Colchester, Tendring and Clacton?
Well, knife crime across the county is reducing. Serious violence is reducing as well, and that's because we're catching many more people as we proactively target them through our gangs and county alliance team and the serious violence unit. Up in Colchester, it's difficult to say the statistics, but as each location has different areas and different statistics as their population increases. But on average, there's around 150 knife-related incidents a month in Essex, and a lot of that is because we are catching more people with them, so we record more crimes. So we are, you know, the amount of people that we catch with knives is increasing, and the knife crime overall is falling. So you know, I haven't got the specific statistics for each individual area, but you can be assured that across the county that the knife crime is falling, and as is serious violence, and we are catching more people and therefore recording more offences of people carrying knives.
Yeah, I think it's really important, again, that point around that Essex is a safe county. There is knife crime that exists, but the work from Essex Police, the work from all of our partners to try and reduce knife crime is having a real effect. We work very closely with a lot of partners across the nation as well, and Essex is seen as being really successful in some of the media work they've done. Essex Police have done a lot of groundbreaking work around their knife archers. So I think, you know, although we hear a lot about in media, we see a lot around social media can spread messages very quickly around knife crime that may increase fear. But I think for us it's really important to stress that, yes, make sure you educate yourself, but also that Essex is a safe place, and that we want to make sure we focus on that rather than the statistics. It's really important. I think the question's a great one that hits that point, but it's about making sure that you can feel safe in your communities, and that the work that Essex Police and all the other agencies working in the north of the county are all trying to work together on that.
Thank you. So the next question we've got is from Basildon Upper Academies, and the question is, around how many knife crimes have occurred this year and how many have been sorted out?
Okay, so we have around, as I said, I think 100 to 150 knife-related offences a month, but the vast majority of those are where we've come across a weapon or we found it as part of our searches. And a lot of those incidents involve people that either know each other or are, as I say, in possession of weapons. So, you know, over the year you're looking at obviously around about 1,200 offences, but I say that's that's falling, and we catch an ever greater percentage of people. So as we become working sort of smarter with technology, and we become aware of more and more incidents, then we catch more people from it.
I think that brings up a really important point as well about how many people have been dealt with. I think for us, it's about making sure that you're talking to people, talking to your trusted individuals. Sometimes you may not feel confident or safe to go straight to the police if you fear that someone you may know or someone you may know within a wider community may be carrying a knife. For us to be able to deal with it, to make sure to keep you safe, we think it's really important that you're able to and feel confident to speak to a trusted individual, someone in your school. Make sure that we can all work together. The more more that we know about it, the more we can work together to hopefully reduce that fear and reduce the risk in your community. So I think that's an amazing question. It leads to the point around just making sure that you feel all really confident to talk to Essex Police, but also talk to, if you feel that you're not able to do that, make sure that you're still able to talk to a trusted individual and ask them for support in taking action against it.
Thank you. And then the next question, which is from St Nicholas School. How could we get back to the low level of knife crime we saw in 2020 when we were back in lockdown?
Right, that's an amazing question. I think I was talking to Gillo earlier before we started about that knife crime isn't something that's isolated from the rest of society, and it's sometimes, you've got to look at how we can work together and change communities as a whole. And I think for me, if you look at the period of lockdown, that was a very different situation and something that was, it controlled populations, but actually one of the things that came through lockdown was the aspect of kindness, working together and people pulling together to try and work to help support their communities. And so for me, if you want to look at the things that we learned through that period, I think those are some of the key aspects and benefits of that was the working together as communities, supporting each other, and those are the things you could take away to hopefully work together to reduce knife crime in the future. So taking some of the good things that came through that, the community spirit, the kindness and the respect for each other that existed throughout that period, bring that forward, and that's how you help to reduce knife crime in that period.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a lot less people out on the streets, so a lot less people committing those offending, and but I really want to sort of concentrate on that sort of community element. Really, it is about the community. The carrying a knife is about the fear of crime, and that comes from the community and from sort of culture, really, and it's up to the communities and the police and our partners to all work together to try to reduce that fear, raise the education and understanding that if you carry a knife, then you are more likely to be involved in an incident that involves a knife, or more likely to injure or be injured yourself. So it is about that community thing, the community, people coming together to talk about what is not going well for the community. And obviously knife crime in any community is not a thing that any of us want to see. We both live in Essex and we want to make sure that we're safe for our children, as well as you guys and the other children that are coming through in the later generations. So now's the time to sort of get involved in the community, get involved in this type of educational process and really try to reduce that fear.
Thank you. And just to add on to that, I think lockdown was a period in which we saw that knife crime did stop and there was a significant decrease. And I think if we've gone there once, we can definitely go there again. So I just think we need to move forward to that as a whole, as a community. So the next question I've got is from Hassenbrook Academy again. And the question is, if carrying knives is illegal, then why can we buy them?
Knives do obviously have a practical purpose. You obviously eat your dinner with a knife, I would hope, and they're used in lots of practical ways. So obviously in the kitchen is the most place you'd use it, but it's used in industry as well. And it's important that we're still able to have access to knives. And there is some work, I think, going around to try to make knives less dangerous, but they do have that practical reason. You obviously can't buy a knife yourself if you're at a certain age, and retailers have some restrictions placed on them, as do online retailers who are delivering as well. And there's new legislation that online retailers have to have an adult sign for the packages, for instance. So there are many steps to try to prevent knives falling into the hands of people that would use them other than what their intended purpose was in terms of kitchen knives. But you obviously still need to be able to buy a knife in order to conduct your daily business. But it's those that are using those knives for illegal purposes that we would target and want to raise the education around.
Yeah, I think there's a really important point there, and it's an amazing question again to really get down into the point, is that, as Clayton alluded to, there is some work being done by the Museum of Cutlery, which is an amazing organisation which I'd never heard about, is that basically by rounding off the tips of knives, it would not affect the ability to for used in culinary purposes, so for cooking, but actually it would save more lives. But obviously there's a huge lobbying effort to do that, and that's kind of a really niche passion of mine, is about how we kind of actually make small behavioural changes. But also I think it comes back to a cultural point around the what we see on social media, what we see being friends. Sometimes when people kind of use a knife as a way as a status symbol, and how we change that culture around that as well, so that we often know that what we see on social media isn't always the true picture or reflection of someone's life. And actually we need to be able to make sure that when we are working and seeing, and we take a critical mind approach to seeing social media posts around that, because I think yes, they exist, but also we need to make sure and they have a purpose, but that purpose remains what it's used for and not what it's been used in criminal activity. So I think yes, there are changes to be made, and we can all work together again to do that.
Thank you. And the next question is from Sydney May McCall in Basildon Upper Academies, and this question is, if you knew anyone in danger with knife crime, what would you do?
So I suppose it would depend on the individual circumstances. So if someone, if you're out on the street and you saw or you knew somebody was carrying a knife, then Essex Police would consider that an emergency and would urge you to call 999, and we will respond to that as soon as we possibly can. If you know that someone is carrying a knife habitually, then you can report that online to Essex Police, or you report it to a parent or to a teacher or someone responsible. Move away from the person or keep away from the person with a knife. You can report it anonymously on Crime Stoppers as well. But it's important that you take action, but don't get involved, and keep yourself safe. So as long as it's safe to do so, report it to the various people that I've mentioned. But if you see someone on the street with a knife that's not being used legally, i.e. as part of their work, then call Essex Police and we'll treat that as an emergency.
I think further to that, one of my experiences of working with young people for such a long time is there can sometimes be a stigma around what young people refer to as, sometimes they call it snitching. So if you are worried if someone's carrying a knife, but always feel confident in ringing Essex Police. But it comes back to the point we made earlier as well, is that if you are feeling that there may be something going on in your community, there are trusted individuals. As a violence and vulnerability unit, we're working really hard to sponsor, to fund and engage with as many community organisations in your area. But also you have teachers, you have other trusted individuals. Go to them and speak to them to take action, and then you can kind of deal with this stigma. But again, I would say that the stigma of snitching, we should move away from that. That's something Essex Police are incredibly good at the work they do. They will make sure that they respond very quickly, and I think that's a really important point to make, that I think that you can always feel safe and confident to speak to Essex Police, but also speak to someone who's within your community, a trusted individual.
Thank you. That question was from Sydney May and Emily Gibson at Basildon Upper Academies. And just to add on to that, I think the stigma around snitching is just kind of like, snitching really and truly could save a life or the lives of others around you. So is it worth the stigma, or is it worth saving a life?
It's one of my biggest frustrations. I think that we shouldn't be stuck in this stigma, that working with young people for such a long time, I think it's so important that you can trust those people around you. And back to the earlier question about COVID and lockdown, and it comes down to that kindness element as well, where we, by actually going and approaching Essex Police, going by speaking to someone who's a really trusted individual to you and getting action taken over this, you're showing kindness not just to yourselves, to that person, but to that whole community. If we're able to get in there and work with and deal with them in an appropriate fashion, then we're able to maybe reduce that harm. So I think we really need to move away from the culture of snitching. It's something that really upsets me, and I know it's something that really causes harm in communities, and we've seen it across the UK and the problems it's caused. But there is no, and there should be no stigma, because actually what you're doing, you're not snitching on someone, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your friends, you're protecting your family, but also you're protecting that individual as well. And I think that's what we should be focused on.
Thank you. And I've got another question from Hassenbrook Academy, and the question is, can we carry self-defense gadgets, especially for women and vulnerable people? That question was Taha Kashif.
No, you can't generally carry self-defense weapons. I'm not sure what you mean by self-defense weapons. I mean, there are alarms and that sort of thing to keep you safe, to try to keep you safe should it come to it. But probably your best self-defense weapon would be your mobile phone. And if you find that you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, then get yourself out of it as quickly as you possibly can. If you can't do that, then call the police, and obviously we will come to you as soon as we can. You cannot carry a knife for your own self-defence. As we've said before, the hospital data and our own data and statistics show that if you do carry a knife, you're more likely to come to harm yourself or harm others, and the impact of that is huge for you, your family, and the other person involved in it as well. So you cannot carry weapons for self-defence. There are alarms and those type of devices available for you that are legal, but I would suggest that keep your mobile phone charged, keep your mobile phone with you, but avoid those areas that you feel as though that or those people that you feel as though that may bring harm your way, or for you to be involved in some kind of harm. The law says that if you are with a person who carries a knife and that person goes on to use that knife to commit crime, then you could be liable for prosecution as well. So my best advice is to avoid people that are breaking the law and putting themselves, you and others in danger.
It's kind of a sad state of affairs where we have to talk about that, but I think for me it's also making sure that I think Clayton really hit the nail on the head, is that mobile phone is your friend. But so when you're talking about walking home, if you're going into areas, just plan ahead, let people know where you're going, what time, and I think that applies to everyone. I always make sure I do that as well, just to let people know. So just to make sure you've got a plan, a preparation, and people know where you are. The mobile phone is, changed that level of safety. So I think that is a much more way to feel confident and safe, rather than feeling that you have to carry a weapon for self-defence. Making sure that you're planned and prepared is a much better protection for yourself.
Thank you. So the next question is, what's the sentence for possessing a knife? And that's from Tracy B at Tendring Technology College.
There's lots of consequences of carrying a knife. If you're talking about a prison sentence, then you could have up to 5 years in prison for carrying a knife. But there's lots of other issues that come with carrying a knife. Obviously, you could be excluded from school, you could be arrested, and then that means that you would be spend time in a police cell. You'll be interviewed, your parents will have to come down to support you, and then you would go on bail, or you'd be would have to take the information to the Crown Prosecution Service, and then you could be convicted as a result of that. The conviction for carrying a knife would have consequences on your career, and it would have consequences on where you can travel around the world as well. So places like New Zealand, Australia, the United States, Canada would likely restrict you travelling there if you carry a criminal conviction. You'd have to declare it on any employment that you wanted in the future, so it would affect your career prospects as well. And obviously being excluded from school would probably be devastating for you and for your family as well. You'd have to find another school or somewhere else that would take somebody who's been carrying those knives. So there is the bottom line is, yes, you can get up to 5 years in prison for carrying a knife, but there are lots of other consequences that come with it as well, which you might sort of feel is equally as bad as that.
Yeah, I think the consequence of 5 years in prison is a bad consequence, but as Clayton says, it will stick with you for the rest of your life. It will be something that follows you around, and it will have a massive impact on your life opportunities. So I think, that's a really clear point.
Thank you. And just to add to that, it's just so crazy how there's so many other things that follow from like one split decision that a person could make, which they think is actually protecting themselves, but they're really putting themselves at harm 10 times worse than what they could imagine. So thank you, Tracy, for that question. The next question is from Michelle May, and it's, is the majority of knife crime over gangs?
Surprisingly, no. Actually, the majority of knife crime is when two people know each other. So usually in like a domestic setting, that's where a lot of our knife and eyeball crime happens. Gangs and knives aren't necessarily completely linked. There isn't enough evidence to say that if you're in a gang you automatically carry a knife. We find that a lot of young people will start to be exploited through gangs, and they may be asked to carry a weapon as part of that gang. But really most of the offences occur when two people know each other, either in a domestic setting or when the police come across them, where we've stopped and searched somebody, or we've had information to say they're carrying a knife, or when we've been carrying out our general arrests or search warrants of people or places, then we've come across those weapons. So most of the offending isn't the most serious offending. It is lower level possession of weapons and knives, which makes up most of the offending. So again, it comes back to that fear. Actually, the chances of being involved in a serious incident involving a knife is very low. But people do commit offences with a knife, and it's not they're not the ones that actually that you hear about. It's a lot of those, that in a domestic setting where people know each other.
So thank you, Michelle May, for that question. And this kind of event at the moment is just kind of drawing to an end. So thank you for all of those who have joined. And there'll be another session at 12:30, which will be to do with water safety. So I just want to thank you, Clayton and Jim, for joining us today, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Robert. I'm Head Cadet at the Harwich Unit for Essex Police. I joined the Police Cadets to protect and serve my community. I like to help on voluntary events, so sort of charity events, litter picks with McDonald's, CGN restaurants, and generally just help the community and make them feel safer.
Hello, my name's Vicky Thorne, and the reason why I joined Cadets is because I like to help my community, help people.
My best moment at Cadets was the Tedron show in 2019 when I helped locate a missing child, and basically I helped a mother in distress just at ease.
My best moment is making new friends and honestly meeting new people.
Do it. Join Cadets. It will be the best sort of moments of your life.
It's really fun. You get to learn new things that normal people won't be able to learn.